What am I saying again?
This is MPW,
MPW.
the podcast
with your host, Xylo Aria.
Cool.
A podcast about music production
For the everyday musician.
where we learn from experienced studio engineers and each other.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of the MPW podcast. I'm your host, Xylo Aria, and today we have the lovely Richard Schrieber with us. So Richard is an award-winning composer for trailer music and has worked with loads of huge clients, including likes of Disney, Warner Brothers, Universal, and loads more. So great to have you with us, Richard, and how is your day going so far? So I guess it's morning for you?
Yeah, well, it's an absolute pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me. Yeah, so far it's only 9:20 in the morning. So just to give you guys some context about my day so far, I've decided to splash out on something for myself. This was my wife was saying, Rich, you should treat yourself, And I thought, okay, fine. I bought myself a posh coffee machine, a bean to cup coffee machine. So I've just had my second cup of coffee from that machine, and it's like, there's a barista in my house. It's great.
That's excellent.
Yeah.
So you're potentially almost bouncing around from your caffeine hit this morning.
Little shaky, yeah, that's it.
Okay. Oh, that's great. That's good. Oh, it's good to give yourself a little present once in a while.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. No, that sounds like a great one. Actually, my friend just recently was going on about his coffee machine, which apparently is from Aldi, and it has incredible reviews apparently, and he's just in love with it.
Wow.
But yeah, so anyway, good coffee machines are a great start to the day.
Oh, mate, yeah. Daily life upgrade. That's it.
Yeah. Excellent. Good to hear. Good to hear. So today we are chatting about trailer music and all things surrounding that. Before we get into that specifically, I'd love to hear a bit about your background in music and where you got started and how you ended up doing what you're doing now, which I think is quite a few different things.
I love these questions because you've just invited me to talk for 40 minutes. Okay, so I think, it's one of these, my background, I'll start in the pots and pans cupboard of being a 2-year-old, I think I've always been slightly intrigued by life. I'm going broad and creative here. Always intrigued by sounds, always just basically wanted to create all the time, whether that was drawings, whether that was making up my own songs. My mum gave me one of her little dictaphones, and I've still got the recordings of it. Here it is. Got this little mini cassette of me recording songs about my G.I. Joe figures. So, this kind of, I always had this curiosity about creating and, even polishing stones and all sorts of things, little plants and things. I always wanted just to create things. And the whole process fascinated me as a way to kind of, not transmute, but, take the emotions that I was feeling and put them into something, I don't think I've been very good at communicating my emotions, or at least being honest with myself about them. So I'd always find ways to allow that to come out. And then, as I got older, I, did that thing where I was like, oh, okay, maybe I'd like to learn an instrument. And I got a keyboard for my 10th birthday and sort of learning all the nursery rhymes as you do, and it was cool. I quite enjoyed it. I liked, I was fascinated by it, and I liked to be able to play the ABBA songs that I knew, it was this, this kind of world. And whilst this was happening, the music in my household was very much a world of like cheesy pop, so ABBA or Lionel Richie or Billy Ocean, listening back, it's cheesy pop, but I love it. Or dramatic film scores, so the Michael Nyman's piano score or the Last of the Mohicans score, these, or even the Beverly Hills Cop, which was more of a soundtrack than but that's so it was movie soundtracks and cheesy pop. So the piano was my kind of way of, I could play these cheesy pop songs on it. This is great, And then one day my brother decided he wanted to learn the electric guitar, and obviously he was my big brother, so I'd always look up to him and just be like, well, I want to do that. That looks so cool. Much cooler than me sat at a keyboard playing, gimme, that type of thing. So when he was out of the house, I would sneak into his room and take his guitar and sit in my room and sort of have a little play. And at the same world, this was, I think, for a lot of musicians, your teenage years is where your musical world both opens up and closes down. So I was suddenly realizing that there was this world of music that I could jump into. And at that time, I discovered rock, specifically the Smashing Pumpkins. And I got a little songbook and I taught myself their song Cherub Rock. And it was no turning back from there. I was absolutely obsessed with the guitar and learning songs. And I had a little tape cassette that I would used to sit and just write my own songs and figuring out what happens if I did this with my fingers on the guitar, what happened if I did this, and always just kind of, like I said, it was that curiosity about creating. And I'd always record them, and I've still got those cassettes. They're not to hand here, but they're down there. Still got those cassettes. I listen back to them and I was like, yeah, these are great, terribly played, but the ideas are there. And this kind of carried on, and I did the natural progression of, okay, well, I'm playing these songs. I want friends to play these songs with. So me and my friends formed a band, and we started playing, covers of the Foo Fighters, Nirvana, basically, 90s rock and grunge which was awesome. I loved it. It was so much fun. All the while this was happening, art was also my thing. I loved drawing, painting, creating videos. I just loved the art world. I loved the idea that there, and this is why the Smashing Pumpkins fascinated me as well, because Billy Corgan's lyrics were complicated, to say the least. This world of like, there is reading to be done beyond what you initially see or hear. The words they're singing don't necessarily mean what you think they do. And the same with these paintings. You go see a Louise Bourgeois sculpture that's a massive spider, and you go, well, it's a big spider, isn't it? No, it's not just a big spider. It's this type of thing. It's this lovely kind of world of inner depths. And I think that's what we're all doing when we're writing music. Although we're writing a synth pop tune, what we're trying to sing out to the world is those things we're feeling deeper. So this was sort of bubbling around in my head at the time. So I then went and studied art whilst pursuing the band, air quotes, pursuing the band. And when you study things like art, you get this kind of like strange push and pull where you're told to do this. So in it was art foundation course where I met my wife, and we both had the similar thing. It was like, you're told this is what you can do, but if you want to do anything well, you have to do it like this. So, my wife was told that she couldn't do still life painting because no one cares about still life painting. And it's this very bizarre world where they're basically like, you have to be conceptual. So we both went, okay, we don't want to do art anymore. My wife went and studied something else, English literature, and I went off and went, okay, well, I want to be a musician. That's what I'm going to do. So me and the band, we all went to this Academy of Music. I'm giving you the long form, by the way, here.
Okay.
This isn't the short form. I'm giving you the long form because I think this is my favorite bit of our podcast is other people's stories.
Okay.
Stories. So we all went and studied in this place called the Academy of Contemporary Music, which is basically training you to be a session musician. And whilst we were there, we won some competitions to be produced by Skunk Anansi's guitarist, and we got some of our demos produced, and I loved that process of writing and producing. And it was there I realized, actually, I don't want to be a musician. I want to write music. I want to compose music. And this was where my love of film score really blossomed at this point. I was listening to all of the films I used to watch, like Beetlejuice, Edward Scissorhands. Oh, wait, this is all the same composer. This is all Danny Elfman. So I then started trying to figure out how to play all this stuff on the guitar. I had this kind of lovely frank chat with my wife. She was my girlfriend at the time. And I was like, I don't think I want to do the band. I think I want to be a composer. And there was a course in Brighton, a university called Music and Visual Art, which was the study of music and the study of visual art and how the two intertwine. And it was just wonderful. It was 3 years of play. It was just, writing music for contemporary dance, like doing sound installations, learning Max MSP, learning Logic. It was literally everything. It was great. And my tutor was a fascinating guy. He was one of the orchestrators for Star Trek: The Next Generation. So he had this background in film as well. So I used to constantly pester him for information, and it was just great. I loved it, and it made me realize that actually it's not that I want to compose music, it's that I want to write music for something. I want to combine my two passions, the art and the music. And then, as a lot of people find when they come out of university, you go, well, this is great. I'm going to make a thing of this. So, I'm going to become successful in this next 6 months. And then obviously I didn't. It was really hard to get even anyone to listen to my demos. But through a kind of strange side channel, my friend came to me, and at that time I was basically telling everybody and anyone that would listen, I'm a film composer. No, I've not done any work, but I am a film composer, that type of thing. And my friend came to me and said, look, Rich, me and my band are doing a showcase in front of the bigwigs at a record label, and we want some dramatic music to walk on stage to. At the time, I was obsessed with Sean Callery's 24 soundtrack, and I had been doing that kind of like tense underbed. So I wrote this sort of little underbed for them to walk on stage to in the same key that was basically just like one long build, which incidentally is kind of what I do in trailer music. One long build so that they could walk on stage, strap their guitars on, and then as the track finished, boom, all come in at the same time.
Mm.
And the lead singer's girlfriend worked for a music publisher called Boozy and Hawkes in London. She heard what I did, and she sent me an email saying, hey, can you send me a show reel? So this was back in the day of CDRs, or CDRWs. So I sent in a CD of my greatest hits, which instantly, it goes against all the advice I ever give anyone. It had about 60 tracks on there. It was enormous.
Wow. Okay.
I was just like, I'm going to show you I can do everything. So I sent it in, and she said, this one track is great. Let's bring you in. So I signed to them as a composer. And at the time I thought, as most people do, you sign a contract with a publisher. I'm officially there. I have made it. Where's my Ferrari? Where's my hot tub? But what I didn't realize was this was advertising. I was going into advertising. So I was writing music for advertising. And what I didn't realize was that it's all pitching. So you don't see money unless you win the job. So I was sort of pitching endlessly. And I won some jobs. But the interesting thing was the one track on that CD that she liked was the one track that landed my first ad placement, which was this national cheese advert. It was a big deal, it paid really well. It paid like £20,000 for a year, and they relicensed it for 3 years.
Wow. Okay.
So at the time it was like, cha-ching!
Yeah.
Admittedly, I got 50% because, standard sort of library cut. So even £10,000, that was just like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. I was 25? Because me and my wife had gone traveling in between there. So we got back and landed this thing after. It was about 2 years of non-stop pitching for free.
Wow.
And whilst I was doing this, I was also going onto all those networking sites and pitching my work as a composer to short film directors, to corporate production companies. And I was doing that stuff, and that was, especially the corporate videos, just so tedious. Basically, how many times can I try and rip off Coldplay without ripping off Coldplay? That's pretty much those 2 years of writing music for corporates. So whilst I was working with this company, the girl who I was working with, Jen, she left and was replaced by this guy called Vikram Goody. And at the time, I was just sending them endless music, please pay attention to me, please love me, that type of thing. And one of the things I'd done was this sort of ukulele, this album of me playing the ukulele, whistling, and playing the recorder. Because back then it was really popular in ads. And I met him, and he was like, this is great stuff, send me more. Okay. And our relationship kind of developed, and then he got a job in LA working for another company. And he said to me at that point, I'm launching my own company called Elephant Music, and I'd like you to be one of the writers. Great, of course. Yeah, we work really well together. And he turns to me and says, I would like you to write some piano music. Can you write piano music? I said, hells yeah, I can write piano music. So I wrote 50 tracks in about 3 weeks, and I sent them to him, and they became the first 5 Elephant Music albums. So I'm going to fast forward a little bit because I realize I'm talking for ages. But the lesson I keep telling everyone is, firstly, it takes some time to build relationships, but secondly, you've got to keep producing work. And he then started focusing on film trailers, because up until then we were hammering advertising, and advertising's it's a completely different ball game, really. Actually, the way you do it, I'd be having conference calls with the ad execs and the directors and the producers, and some of the adverts would have the New York office, the Rio de Janeiro office, and the London office all working on the same ad at the same time. So you'd go on this conference call, and the guy from New York would be like, "I love this part, but I don't like this part," and the guy from London would say the complete opposite. And the guy from Brazil would say something completely different. So you're sort of like going, "Okay, I don't really know what I'm supposed to do with this information."
Yeah.
So we started working on trailers, and I didn't really win anything because I didn't even realize trailer music was a thing. I thought it was the film score composer who wrote the trailers. So lots of things were happening at the same time. I was working with other companies, and all this while, I should really have said I was teaching music. I was a music teacher. Because I was, although I got that big ad, it wasn't enough to really allow me to jump ship, I guess. And I still love teaching. I was teaching young kids, so I used to teach ages 4 up to 18, a variety of things, whether it was classical guitar, electric guitar, ukulele, African drumming, production. It was pretty much whenever the head teacher of a school said, "Can you do something?" I'd say, "Yes, yes, give me money." So yeah, I loved it. And I don't regret having done it, because seeing a child's face light up when they finally realize they love music is absolutely priceless. So yes, all this while I was teaching at the same time as kind of pushing my career as a composer. And then I'd gotten to this point, I was teaching a college, and that year group I had at the college were so difficult. They were very physical, and they were it was kind of like babysitting, really, babysitting 17-year-olds who didn't want to be there, even though they opted to be there. So I turned to my wife and said, "Look, I just don't want to do this anymore." I'd gotten to the point where I just didn't want to teach. She just said, "Look, just hand in your notice, see what happens."
Mm-hmm.
So I handed in my notice to all the schools I was teaching at, and lo and behold, I got an email from Boozy and Hawks saying, "There's a Japanese film company who are doing a feature film and want you to score it." And then Vic turns around to me and says, "Oh, we just won 2 ads." So there I had, all of a sudden, enough money for that year to go full time.
That's amazing.
And I haven't looked back since. And I do often say this to my students and anyone who listens. Sometimes you have to take that. It's like you have to take that leap of faith, like in Indiana Jones. Only the penitent man shall pass. You see ahead of you a giant chasm, and you just have to step out there and see what happens. And sometimes it doesn't work, but you'd be surprised. And since then, I was going full time, and obviously when you go full time, you go into panic mode. So I then started working with loads of companies all at the same time, still doing corporates, still doing ads, still doing trailers, still doing whatever they would offer me. And then I read Tim Ferriss's book, 4-Hour Work Week, and he introduced you to was it Pareto's principle of 80-20, and it was so basically like, what 20% of your work is bringing 80% of your income. And I looked at all the work I was doing, and I realized, working with Vic is perhaps 10% of my work, and it's bringing in at least 95% of my income. So I turned around to all of the other companies and said, "Sorry, bye." And again, my work just skyrocketed after that. We just I started producing more work for trailers for Elephant Music. And because I was giving them more work, more clients were getting it, I was getting more placements. So yeah, and I haven't really looked back since. Admittedly, I'm not really diving into all the other avenues of my work at this stage, but that's the long form of how I got into trailer music. To be fair, it's not really the long form, it's more of the
Medium
abbreviated,
form,
but
maybe.
yeah.
Okay. Okay. That is good to know. And yeah, lots kind of going on there in different ways, and how you ended up there. But thank you for sharing that. And kind of going into trailer music, because like you said, that you didn't know that was a thing at a certain point. Maybe some of our audience doesn't either. So when we're talking trailer music, what exactly are we talking about?
Okay, so I want to clarify a few myths on this one. So it can be the film composer who writes the trailer music, but it rarely is, if at all. But what trailer music is, by definition, is music that is used on motion picture advertising. So film trailers as we know them. And that could be for the big feature trailers, which we see at the cinema, or it could be on TV spots, which we see on TV, or it could be for socials, which we see on social media. And the second myth I want to bust on that is that a lot of people, if they understand trailer music is a thing, they then think that trailer music is just epic orchestral music, which it is not.
Okay.
You can write almost every style of music and still be a trailer music composer. There is an element of sort of air quotes trailerization once you dive into the structures and the kind of the sound palette, but a lot of my work that has been the most successful has been very far from epic orchestral.
Okay. Oh, yeah, two things that I definitely didn't know about trailer music. So that's great to start there. And then going into, so you were saying, working with Vic on the trailer music seemed to be the most successful avenue for you. So how does that, where do you get into the process there, or how do you get hired for a particular job? Is it always you going out with a kind of pitching for a brief, or how does that work?
Okay, I presume you mean like if I was already working with a trailer music publishing company,
Well, I mean, would that be step one before anything else comes along?
Yeah, it's as with every avenue of income in the music industries, there are many doors to the same room. So let's first of all talk about the steps in the process of creating a film trailer. There'll be the film company will hire a trailer house, and that trailer house is basically an advertising company that works specifically for film companies. So they're called trailer houses, and they will then pitch to the client how they will handle the advertising of their film. And that comes in the form of feature trailers, teaser trailers, TV spots, social spots, promos. There's a whole bundle of them. Some, for instance, like Captain America Civil War that had 200 TV spots. There's a huge amount of advertising going on. So that company, the trailer house, will pitch each trailer and each cut to the film company. But whilst that's happening, other trailer houses will also be pitching.
Okay.
And within each trailer house, there will be one, perhaps more, editor cutting each of these trailers. And those editors, so there will be several of the same trailer being cut. So perhaps they're going for trailer 1, which is the first big release. So there might be, at any given time, 10 plus versions of trailer 1 being cut. So each editor will then be selecting music either from their library of music, which is delivered from all the trailer music libraries, or they will have a custom composer working on it. And again, much like advertising, you don't get paid until they win. So I've had it numerous times where I have won out on a trailer, but that trailer hasn't won out over other trailers.
I see. Okay.
So I thought I was doing custom work. I thought I'd landed 2 of the biggest films I could possibly have landed at the same time. It was a big DC film and a big sci-fi film, both trailer ones, and they both said, yep, the editors, they love your music, it's on. I thought, this is it, bring on the golden rain, Well, that sounds terrible. Yeah, bring on the gold. And then those trailers didn't win out. So there is this whole process. And so I just want to elaborate this other thing is that then there's the trailer music companies that write and create music specifically for trailers.
Right. So it seems like there are a lot of different pieces of the puzzle that need to fit perfectly for you to be successful in getting that placement, which probably a lot of them are completely out of your control.
Yes.
Which is quite frustrating, I'm sure, but I guess all part of the fun. Okay, so say that you were I guess when you mentioned that the trailer houses would be picking from a library or picking a composer, you would be kind of in the composer or kind of making music for the libraries as well.
Yeah, so basically the two avenues for a trailer music composer are custom or library, really.
Yeah. Okay.
Um,
Right. So say for the custom option, what kind of instructions would you get to then make something for?
Yeah, custom, again, that varies tremendously. Sometimes you would just get a call or an email from the music supervisor. So just to kind of elaborate, the music supervisor is the person that oversees all the music placement on all the trailers. So they're kind of in charge of where something goes. The editors have say as well, but the supervisor will be kind of like overseeing everything. So you might get a call from the supervisor who says, "Hey, we're doing this for this. Can you do it?" And it can be as simple as that.
Okay.
Or you get an NDA, so non-disclosure agreement, sent to you. You have to sign it before they send anything over to you. And then you'll get the trailer. This isn't quite as common as you'd like it to be. And then you write to the picture. And then there's a myriad of options in between. So once I had a trailer sent to me, I was like, great, they're sending me the trailer. This hardly ever happens. And it was 2 minutes 20 of black screen and then blips. Like, here's your edit point. Here's your edit point. Or they send me just the voiceover.
Okay.
Or they send me the audio for the whole cut. Or they like I said, or they say, we just love what you do. Can you write us a piece of music? And you send it. Then they cut to your music. Then they send it back saying, can you make these changes?
Right. So would you get some sort of background on, I guess you'd know a little bit about what the film is about maybe so that you can have some sort of idea?
Yeah, the tricky part there is you are often working to the interpretation of the trailer house. Because I'm sure you've all had this experience where you've seen a movie trailer and then been like, I'm seeing that. That's epic. And then you go to the cinema and see it and you go, what?
Yeah.
This isn't like the trailer. Because that was the trailer house's interpretation of the movie and how they were going to get more bums on seats. So you might assume that, oh, okay, this is a Star Trek film. I know what's going to happen in this trailer. It's going to be this, it's going to be this. And then they say to you, no, we're going for this angle.
Right.
So there's all sorts of different angles you can go. With custom, the best angle is always go with the story, which is one of those annoying sentences that's much, much harder than it is to say.
Okay, I see. Okay. All right. And then if you are pitching or creating music for the libraries, then how do you go about that? Is it just any type of sound or what's the approach?
So this is my jam. It's basically production music, but it's focused specifically for trailers. And there's all sorts of ways this could happen. It works in two ways, pretty much. If you kind of collapse everything into two groups of you pitching an idea to the trailer music company, the trailer music company asking you to do something. But it all revolves around trying to figure out the trends, what's doing well now, and what's going to do well later. The trends are often dictated by Oscars. So the Oscar-winning score, then you'll see trailerizations of that happening. So after the Moonlight score, with that incredible violin track, I forget which one it's called, it's this wonderful, it's like this myriad of movements and arpeggios, it's just lovely. Then all of a sudden, we got a ton of briefs saying, and we still do, solo violin or small violin ensembles, very classical sounding, but trailerized. And trailerization, just for those of you who aren't sure, is basically just making something sound larger than life. So rather than it just being a solo violin, you'd throw in sort of big sub hits or sort of a nice sub bass in the final minute of the track to really give it that trailer sound. Because when you go to see a trailer, the sounds are huge. And you need to be carrying a lot of weight in your track, even if it is just a solo violin.
Okay. All right. Good to know. So when you're pitching something for maybe the library or I guess even for the composition, Would you say that someone that's looking to do this needs to be familiar with multiple genres or not?
Yes, it's kind of a tricky one to answer that actually, because for me, the genres and styles are almost irrelevant in a way that the most important part is, do you understand the structures? Can you give your track a sense of character? And do you understand the basics of trailerization? Because you'll notice that lots of commercial music gets placed on trailers. So, you don't have to know a ton of stuff. There are some incredible hip hop producers who land trailers all the time. There are some incredible classical writers who land trailers all the time. You don't have to know a ton of genres and styles. It's just that thing of, can you write fantastic music? Can you structure it correctly? Because writing a great song is not the same as writing a great piece of production music, specifically trailer music. All the trailer music we write, even if it is EDM, even if it is dramatic piano, it has to bring with it the 3 acts of a film. And that's the way we write trailer music. Act 1, Act 2, Act 3. Act 1 sets the mood of the film. Act 2 brings in the drama and the pace. Act 3, throw everything at it. This is the explosion. This is the climax. And even when you're doing dramatic piano, it would equate to Act 1 is a reverb-soaked piano playing a few notes. Act 2 is the main arpeggio, the main riff, sort of driving the track forward with the strings coming in. Act 3 is the orchestra joins the piano for this huge sort of Michael Nyman-esque explosion of arpeggios. Same with if you were doing strings and beats, like hip hop writing. Act 1, you wouldn't throw all of your stuff in the first 30 seconds. You'd perhaps introduce the hi-hat. You'd have a lovely sort of 808 bass, something like this. Then you'd come in with the full-on kit in Act 2. Then you'd bring in the other elements in Act 3. You sort of layer everything to tell the story so that you give the editors the chance to have your track cut up and it still make sense.
Okay. Yeah, I could almost hear that kind of happening as you said it from trailer music that I've heard, which is really cool. Then looking at the music that you're creating, is that always a completely solo process, or do you get other instrumentalists involved or anything like that?
It's largely just me. There are some very, very successful trailer music duos, like Zwei and Two Steps from Hell, or Superhuman, 2 composers, producers working together. Generally, it also depends how your relationship is with the producer. What I mean by the producer, I mean the person overseeing the musical project. So if you're working with a trailer music company, there'll be a producer, whether it's the head of the company or a producer specifically, who will say, we want this album, can you do it? And you send over your work to them and they say, great, can we change this? Can we change this? Can we change this? So there is a collaborative element between you and the producer then, much like if you're a recording artist, there would be a collaborative element between you and the producer. The producer would say, hey, let's chuck some tambourines on the chorus. And you'd be like, what? That's crazy. That type of thing. And sometimes there will be instrumentalists. So we have recorded with orchestras. And again, I did 3 albums of trailerized string quartets recently, which was so much fun. And it wasn't actually a string quartet, it was one string player who manages to play all of the string instruments. He is an absolute machine. Yeah, and also in time and in tune, and the stuff I was sending him was basically impossible because, I'm not really writing for the violin, I'm just writing for the keyboard and just chucking the parts to him. So it varies, it can be as collaborative as you want it to be. There are some composers who will sort of work on an album sort of tucked away in their cave of wonders and then come out with this magnum opus, Whereas me, I like to just send over 30-second demos, Is this right? Is this right? Is this right? Is this right? But that's the working relationship I have with Vic Elephant Music.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. No, that's cool. When you get a brief or a call or something like that, and you are told about a particular mood. I don't know if that's kind of maybe the instruction that you get from the trailer house. How do you go about bringing that mood into the trailer? Are there any specific techniques that are used to do that, or maybe particular instruments that are tied to certain moods?
Oh, that is a many-faceted question.
Okay.
So if generally the mood is determined by what film you're working on. So is it a horror trailer? Is it a family trailer? Is it this? Is it that? So that will determine largely what you do. The instrumentation can vary. It can be as creative as you do what you want, we love what you do, or it can be as dictated as we don't want to hear a cello. We want to hear a violin and a piano, and that's it. It can be. So it depends on what boundaries are put in for you.
Okay.
So let's say there is a boundary put in place. So for instance, I'm kind of known for a few different styles. One of them is dramatic piano, or at least piano, basically, writing for the piano. Even though, guys, I'm not a pianist, I just love trying to get better at playing the piano, or at least just love how easy the arpeggios are to play. So they'll come to me and say, we want you to do some dramatic piano. So you know how the track is going to be structured, the 3-act structure. So you know what you do. Then it's just a case of the mood would then, much like a song, would be dictated by the chord progression you choose. And if it's not dictated by that, then it's dictated by how you process the sounds that you've captured. Because you could choose an overly upbeat chord progression, but the way you then process those things could dramatically change it. So mood's a tricky one, but the way it would generally work is you would get a brief. Working for a library, you'd get a written brief that would say, we want this, and they would give you a sort of opening paragraph about what the project is about. These are the things we want you to do, and they'll send in some existing trailer references and then some non-trailer references, and then you could get then some more specific notes like instrumentation. So often your work is dictated by what has gone before. So mood's a tricky one because sometimes you can be working on a track that you think is sad, and then you show it to someone else and they go, oh, this is nice. No, it's supposed to be terribly sad. So sometimes, it's the same with any creative work. Sometimes you get lost in the trees. What's the saying? You can't see the wood for the trees. But yeah, generally the mood in trailers is dramatic, generally. Or I think cinematic maybe is a nice. It's not really a mood, but the way you produce your work has this sense of scale and weight.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So that's good. It sounds like everything sort of has that underlying tone, which, no matter what you're kind of working on, which is good to take note of. And are there any techniques or tools that you feel like you use really often in what you do?
Yes.
Okay.
Tools. Now, as I'm sure any music producer knows, there are so many fun toys to play with. So we deal mostly with sample libraries because we are expected to carry the orchestral sound most of the time. Doesn't have to be epic orchestral, but we have to have decent samples. They generally don't like it. The clients don't like it if our sounds don't sound quality, because they pay well. Trailers pay well, so they want it to sound as high end as the production is, and that's often why when you do customs, they'd have the budget for orchestras to do it, or at least recording something on top to give it that element of humanity. So sample libraries, and then it's just basically choose your weapons, because depending on what you do, you will need certain things. But my go-to one for anyone who's interested in getting to training music is you have to have epic drums. You have to. you cannot get away with not having big, massive sounding hits and like punchy toms and taikos. You need all these big drums to give it that trailerization, even when you're dealing with piano stuff. And I'm including here an orchestral percussion, so a decent timpani, decent cymbals, this type of thing, because they give it this sense of grandeur, this sense of scale and weight, which you expect from the narrative of a big production. On top of epic drums, then it's just, like I said, choose your poison, really. We all have strings, we all have brass, we all have pianos. I try not to buy too many libraries.
Okay.
Because otherwise I would be spending all of my money on libraries, because there's so many good ones. So I've still got the ones I still have Native Instruments Complete, and my go-to piano is Alicia Keys. I absolutely love that one. I still use the original Spitfire Albion, not the one they remade, because they sort of snazzed it up a bit, and I didn't like that version as much. I have the original one. I use Spitfire Audio's Hans Zimmer percussion, which is excellent. And then there's sort of a handful of other libraries. I use the East West Hollywood Brass, which is quite old school sounding brass, but it sounds pretty good. Metropolis Arc. These are all, these are pretty much the tools I use for orchestral stuff. And then with regard to effects and stuff, just sound toys. I love sound toys. If it's not Logic's native plugins, it's sound toys.
Okay, that's good to know. And even on, just the last bit, how you're saying, I'm happy to use a lot of Logic's kind of built-in tools, because I think sometimes people can get a little bit lost in having every single plugin under the sun and then actually not knowing how to use it exactly. So good to know that you are kind of limiting to a few different things. And so thinking about the career that you've managed to build, if someone was to go into this field, what would you recommend is a sort of the skills that you really need to be successful in this?
Oh, I'm going to go for the old classic.
Yeah.
Don't be a dick.
You know what? It's interesting how many people say that. So there must be something to it.
Yeah, there is. You can be the most talented composer in the world. If you aren't nice to work with, no one's going to want to work with you. It's as simple as that. And admittedly, that does take some awareness. And admittedly, even the best of us don't realize we're being annoying when we are being annoying. But there is the odd exception. But try and be nice to people. Be nice to work with. Remember that the work that you get comes from a relationship, not some robot.
Yeah.
So build a relationship. That's the first thing. And I know that's one of those ones where it's like, well, how do I build a relationship? And simple things like, if there's a company you want to work with, finding something. I know this sounds a bit stalkery, but connecting with them in a different level, like. See what they do, see what they do, go onto their Twitter account. Oh, they love Marvel too. I love Marvel, just that type of stuff. One of the composers I know, he just commented on everything that the certain trailer music companies did on social media. He would comment on absolutely everything. He then got hired.
Wow. Okay.
Because he just, and it wasn't commenting like, well done. It was actually interesting comments. I love what you've done in this section. This is amazing. You guys are absolute legends. I'm so in love with your work. That type of stuff. In the same way that if someone leaves a comment on your Instagram picture that's just like a thumbs up, compared to someone saying, I love how awesome your studio looks. Even that type of thing. It's the many levels of it. So the relationships are really, really important, and the writing is secondary. Really. And I know it goes against a lot of what you're sort of taught, in our education system over here in the UK. It's like, your knowledge and skills are most important, So we come out of university just hammering people with our knowledge and skills, and we forget that actually the work will come.
Yeah.
And you will get better. Because the first trailer stuff I did was terrible. It was just terrible. But I tried to be nice, and I tried to keep being of service. And I got there. Now coming to those, rather than the soft skills of, I think it's if you are interested in what skills you need as a music producer to become a trailer composer, the first one is understanding the structure. So I have two schools where I teach trailer music. I have the trailer music school, which is basically just courses that sort of showing people the detailed ins and outs of trailer music. Then with Vikram Gudi, we ran and launched Protégé, the Protégé School, which is a year-long cohort where we teach people the ins and outs of the many genres within trailer music and advertising. And each week, it's the same feedback to our students. You've got to nail the build. You've got to nail the structure. If you get those in place, so much of the work is done for you. So if you're not sure about the build and structure, go just watch a ton of trailers. Watch those trailers you love and just write some notes. What happens between this time and this time? You know, what can you hear? Can you hear like a white noise riser? Can you hear a massive drum roll here? Can you hear a stop down, which is where the music cuts out? You know, all these things, and figure out yourself. And also find the stuff that you like that's interesting. So many people are drawn to trailer music because of epic orchestral, you know, the big bombastic, larger than life stuff that you hear on the big Marvel trailers. But you can hear so many wonderful things. There's some amazing hip hop stuff on trailers as well. That's so simple, but it's got so much character. It just completely captures your imagination straight away. So yeah, there's more, but I think those two, be nice and nail the structure and build.
Yeah. No, that's a great starting point, and like you said, I'm sure you can gain a lot just from taking a bunch of notes from other trailers that are out there and understanding what's going on. So that's good advice. So going back to your career, I guess, just to finish up, what would you say has been your greatest highlight so far?
It's funny, I read this question and I thought, yeah, I should probably think about this one.
Okay.
Greatest highlight of my career. See, this one's a tough one because do you go with your first big placement? Do you go with the placement that enabled you to go full time? Or do you go to the placement that creatively you're most proud of? It's really tricky. I think, I was more like sort of just asking the question out loud.
Yeah. Well, I guess the thing that maybe was the biggest excitement at the time. So it could be the first thing if that's what really kind of sticks in your mind. But any of those three.
Okay, so I have quite a few that I would like to say, but I'll start with this one. Was landing a trailer one with a demo
Okay.
that wasn't mixed and mastered. Up until that point, there had been so much emphasis on mixing and mastering. As a trailer music composer, you are often expected to mix and master to an exceptionally high level. Thankfully, I don't mix or master my music anymore because both of those are completely different skills to composing. Yes, the mixing is entwined, and there is a certain element of balance that you have to work on. But landing a demo, which was a pre-release, so I wrote this demo for an album, the publisher sent it out to a trailer house, and they put it on a trailer. Landing that was the kind of confirmation that sometimes the mixing and mastering isn't as important as the kind of the nugget of the track, the character of the track. If you've got a good thing, you should be able to strip away all of the pomp and circumstance of it and still hear a great track. It's like any good song. If someone can sing it with a single instrument and it still sound like a great song, it's a great song.
Yeah.
You know? So yeah, that was a big moment for me, hearing my stuff being played by an orchestra. You know, although, you know, I would like to highlight this element. I wasn't aware of upper limiting until I started reaching the levels of success that I had been aiming for. So for those of you who don't know about upper limiting, it's where you're subconsciously reaching your subconscious limit of where you think you deserve to be in life. And all of a sudden, you start self-destructing.
Okay.
oh, I've started getting back pain, or like, all these strange things, which is your subconscious basically saying, you don't deserve this because we don't believe you deserve this. So I was watching an orchestra play my track live, and I was just sat there thinking, oh my gosh, this is the most wonderful thing ever, and I got the worst migraine. So so I get aura when I get a migraine, so I basically go sort of half blind.
Okay.
So I was like, well, now I can't see the orchestra. This is awful. and 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 then the headache comes in, and I'm like, I can't even hear the engineers saying, what do you think of that take? And I'm like, I can't even pay attention. I'm sorry, this is awful. So, and for those of you that want to read about upper limiting, there's a great book called The Big Leap. He talks about this one experiment, and I love this experiment for a good example of it, about fleas. So fleas can jump the most extraordinary amount compared to their size. But what they did was they put a bunch of fleas in a box with a glass lid, and all the fleas were jumping about in this box. And then after a given amount of time, they removed the lid, and none of the fleas could jump higher than that lid because they had an imposed belief that they couldn't go further than that. I think that kind of sums up a lot about upper limiting. But yeah, that was even though I got the migraine, you can't hearing an orchestra play your stuff is mind blowing because there's like 40 people down there who have spent their life training to be good at what they do, and they are spending an hour playing your music and making it sound so much better than you thought it ever could do. Oh, and then my third one. Sorry, I know you said one, but my third one would be the first time one of my students landed a trailer. So teaching someone else to do what I do and then them getting a trailer, that was just like, yes, the business. Firstly, it's kind of like nice affirmation that I know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And it's not just like like me being a fool, but I'm sorry, I cheated and did 3.
That's all right. That's all right. Good to hear all of those, and they all are kind of different, exactly like you said. But then going to your greatest challenge, so I will limit you to one there, Rich. So greatest challenge up to this point, and how did you overcome that?
This one's easy. Coming to terms with air quotes failure, or and the many ways that comes in. I know the reason I put it in air quotes is because sometimes you not getting a job might feel like the worst thing in the world, but what you don't realize is you not getting that job meant that you could then get another job and like another placement. It's kind of like understanding how fragile your ego is and how much as musicians we put our ego into our music. So the biggest struggle for me, and I'd like to think I'm over it mostly, is not getting attached to the music I write.
Okay, that is huge, actually.
Because it is.
Yeah.
Because what you do is if you attach yourself to your music, anyone saying anything negative about it isn't your music they're saying negative things about. You perceive it as something negative about yourself. So when you critique someone else's work, or when your work is being critiqued, sorry, you have to just see it as the service you've supplied. And the education I've received in music was very much like, you've only got a few ideas in the bank, and then when you have those ideas out in the public, people are going to try and steal your work. You have to nail your copyright. It's your music. All this type, this sort of fearful marketing around like being in a band, basically. It's not like that. Like, I can write a new piece of music every single day, at least. I can write a better one than that. Just let it go. Take Elsa's advice from Frozen. Let your track go. Let it go, because actually you will become a better writer for it. If you allow other people to critique and analyze your music in the industry, you will then start to understand how to improve your music. Whereas if you do the thing which a lot of people still do, which is, here is my track, and somebody says, can you take out this section? You say, no, because I feel like this serves a better purpose than you understand. You are stopping yourself from growing. And also you're being that person I said not to be. You're being hard to work with. Don't be that person. So it's learning to disassociate from your music. You could still be proud of your stuff you do, but you are an eternal well of creativity and ideas You are not limited to your last air quotes hit. You're not limited to your last air quotes best track. You will write more and you will get better every day.
That's great and really good to know. And yeah, I mean, if you've mastered that of kind of not associating yourself with every piece of art that you put out, that is incredible, Richard. I think loads of musicians can benefit from learning to do that for themselves. So that's incredible. So I guess we might leave it there. But if someone wanted to learn a bit more about, how to do what you do, how can they find you?
Oh, there's so many ways. Yeah, so if you want to learn how to write trailer music, I have some great courses at the trailermusicschool.com. If you want to find me specifically, you can go to my website, richardschreiber.com. I also have a YouTube channel, Instagram at Richard Schrieber. If I don't respond immediately, it's okay. It's not personal. I try to avoid going on social media as much as possible. I say that I still go on every day, So yeah, those are probably the two best ways. Obviously, I do. If you want to really, really master your skills, you feel like you've got it, then myself and Vikram Goody run protege.school, which is a year-long cohort specifically focused on 30 courses of music production within specific genres and styles, 30 business and mindset courses, each delivered each week live, and then if your track is good enough, we then release it and send it to our clients.
That sounds incredible. Cool. Thank you for giving us those points to reach you. And so what's on for the rest of your day? Is it more creation of music or what have you got?
Well, okay. This is a nice question. I like this one. So as a practice for me to let go of my music, I write... I say daily, but I write daily piano tracks. I just sit at the piano and improvise and record it all on a Zoom, and I release it. So I've done 400 or 500 tracks. And so I'll probably do some of those. Again, it's just improvising. I just press record, improvise, and then stop record, and then send it to one of my friends who just edits it and releases it for me. This is just me kind of like reminding myself I can create new stuff every day, regardless. It's this practice of writing. So I'll probably do some of those. And then I have some team review meetings for Protege with Vic. So, seeing how the team's going.
Well, there's another thing that I did not know that you do, which is the creating tracks every day. Not sure how you fit it all in, Rich, but that's incredible. So thank you, and thank you for squeezing this chat into your day as well. It's been lovely.
Yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me, and I absolutely love what you're doing at MPW. I think it's so valuable, and I think the stuff you're giving your community is fantastic.
Thank you. Yeah, doing the best we can. All right. Well, I'll let you get to the rest of your day. Bye.
Thank you. See you.